Hello. If you're an immigrant parent, you are navigating a really unique journey. Not just for you, but for your kids too. Making sure they're doing okay is, of course, priority number one. And in this explainer, we're going to break down how to do just that, starting with the big question that so many parents find themselves asking. Right? This is the question, isn't it? It can be so hard to tell the difference between the normal bumps and bruises of adjusting to a new life and something more serious that really needs your attention. Our goal today is to help you answer this question with a lot more confidence. So, first up, we're going to dive into the key warning signs. Now, I want you to think of these not as reasons to panic, but as really important information. They're basically signals your child might be sending, whether they know it or not, that they could use a little extra support right now. And it's so important to know that you are not alone in worrying about this. Research shows again and again that this settlement period can be a really vulnerable time. I mean, the pressure to adapt to a new culture, a new school, a whole new social scene, it can put kids at a higher risk for these kinds of challenges. Okay, so the first signal to keep an eye on is a kind of persistent sadness or a real drop in motivation. We're not just talking about a bad day here or a passing mood. This is when your child seems to be running on empty all the time, or suddenly they couldn't care less about the hobbies, sports, or friends they used to absolutely love. A second big one can be a shift in how they are socially. Is your child choosing to be alone more and more? Are they dodging plans with friends, spending a ton of time in their room, and kind of pulling away from the family? That kind of social withdrawal can be a really clear sign that something's wrong. Next, just take a moment to tune in to their emotional state. Are you seeing these sudden bursts of irritability or flashes of anger that seem way out of proportion to what's happening? Or maybe it's just a general feeling of emotional instability that feels, totally out of character for them. These big mood swings can be a sign they're struggling to handle some pretty overwhelming feelings inside. Stress has a way of showing up in the body, and sleep is often one of the first places we see it. This could mean they're having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. Or it could be the opposite. They might be sleeping way more than usual, but still seem exhausted all the time. Disrupted sleep is a classic sign that the mind just isn't getting a chance to rest. And look, this isn't just something parents observe. It's backed by major global health organizations. The World Health Organization puts it plainly. Populations on the move face a greater exposure to these mental health challenges. And that context is so important. It validates what so many families are actually going through. Sometimes when a child doesn't have the words to say what's wrong, their body starts talking for them. So pay attention to those mysterious headaches, or frequent stomach aches, or other aches and pains that just don't have a clear medical reason. It can be the body's way of crying out for help. A big part of a kid's world revolves around school, right? So it makes sense that a really clear warning sign can be a sudden drop in their grades. Or maybe you're getting feedback from teachers that they're just not focusing, or they suddenly don't seem to care about their schoolwork. It's really hard to learn when you're struggling on the inside. And finally, there's this really complex challenge of identity. Your child might say things that show they feel lost, like they're caught between two different worlds. They might not feel totally connected to their home culture anymore, but they also don't feel like they fully belong in the new one. And that feeling of being in between can be a huge source of stress. Okay, we've gone through the signs, and that can feel a little heavy, I know. But now, let's pivot. Let's talk about what you can do. This isn't about having all the answers. It's about taking small, consistent, and totally doable steps to build a resilient and supportive world for your child. All right, here's a really powerful checklist. First, daily conversation. Seriously, just 10 minutes of your undivided attention where you just listen without trying to fix anything can be a game changer. Second, create stability. Predictable routines for meals, homework, bedtime. They build this incredible sense of safety when everything else feels new and uncertain. Third, preserve your cultural identity. Share stories, cook traditional foods, speak your language. This stuff grounds them. It strengthens their sense of who they are. Fourth, encourage social activities. Gently, nudge them toward clubs or sports where they can build new friendships. Next, focus on physical health. Never ever underestimate the power of good food and solid sleep. They are the foundation of mental health. Then talk openly about your family's migration story. Acknowledging the tough parts and celebrating the strength it took is so validating for them. And last, just stay aware. Keep watching for those signs we talked about, not with anxiety, but with loving attention. Your support is absolutely the most important thing in your child's world, but it's also so important to know when it might be time to bring in a professional. And I want to be really clear. Taking that next step is a huge sign of strength. It is not a sign of failure. So let's talk about when that step might be necessary. So, when is it time to get help? Here are the really clear indicators. If those warning signs we talked about stick around for more than, say, 4 to 6 weeks, if you see a really clear, significant shift in their behavior or their mood, and this one is urgent. If your child ever talks about feeling hopeless or mentions death or feeling worthless, you need to act on that immediately. And finally, if they withdraw so completely that you feel like you just can't reach them anymore, these are the signals that it's time to call for backup. And getting help doesn't have to be this big, scary mystery. The best places to start are with a child psychologist, your child's school counselor. They can be an amazing resource, or even a community mental health center in your area. Many of them have experience working with immigrant families. So let's bring this all together. If you take one thing away from this explainer, please let it be this. Your awareness, just you noticing these changes and understanding what they might mean, that is the single most powerful tool you have. And that brings us to this really key difference. On one hand, you have adaptation. It's a normal part of the journey. Yeah, it has challenges, but they're temporary, and they can be managed with your support. But on the other hand, you have chronic stress. That's what happens when all that pressure just builds and builds. It becomes a real risk to mental health, and that's when it requires a real intervention. Knowing the difference between these two is everything. At the end of the day, simply noticing the signs early and taking action, whether that's just offering more support at home or reaching out to a professional, that is the greatest, most powerful form of care you can possibly provide during this incredible and, yes, challenging journey. So we'll end by turning the question over to you. For those of you who have walked this path, what is one piece of advice you would share with another parent starting this journey? Please share your wisdom and experience in the comments. You never know who you might be helping. Thank you so much for your time.